here is Bernie Sanders. I'm going to play a short clip of the interview, and then we can play a little bit more of the longer clip. But here's Bernie Sanders pretty much selling out climate change in order to vote for Joe Biden. Now, understand, the biggest contributor to the climate crisis, is the military. So you can't be fine with sending money to Ukraine and just funding the military industrial complex and then be like, oh, I'm for, let's fix this climate change. Huh? Like that doesn't go. But let's listen to Bernie Sanders. We'll comment after on the other side. It's about 90 seconds.
Here, can you in good conscience ask your supporters to vote for Mr. Biden?
Well, look, the contrast that I think President Biden made it very clear in the State of the Union address. If you believe that climate change is real, you got to vote for President Biden. If you believe that women have a right to control their own bodies, you got to vote for President Biden.
Oh, what a cut.
If you think that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, you don't give trillions of dollars in tax breaks to the 1%, you've got to vote for Biden. If you want to lower the cost of prescription drugs, you got to vote for Biden. If you believe in democracy and involving people in the process rather than keeping people from voting, you have to vote for Biden.
So you're saying we need to put...
Now, the question is, in good conscience, do you understand that just meaning like your conscience is going to be clear if you tell your supporters to vote for him? And he's saying yes. He's saying, and he's pointing out, because he's naming things that might appeal to people who will be his supporters, like climate change. You notice what he says: if you believe climate change is a thing, not if you believe Joe Biden is actively doing something to help climate. Like if you just think it exists.
That's a great point.
That's the point he's making. He's not going as far as saying Joe Biden's going to do anything. He just because I've seen along other interviews where his point is that Donald Trump doesn't even claim climate change is a thing. At least now, Joe Biden. Think of that bar. Go ahead, Nick.
No. Let's think about that for a second. Doesn't that make Joe Biden worse? This has been my position. Like the right-wing position is that, hey man, this climate shit, I don't believe it. Fuck it. Now, there are a lot of people that say they don't believe it. They're just doing the interests of big oil and corporate interests. But let's say they really believe that. Isn't that more noble that they don't believe it, so they're governing in a way that's according to their belief? Now, let's say you do believe in this new climate code that does a lot of harm to the actual cause of environmentalism. You actually believe that the world is going to end in a few years because of climate change. And then you still continue your policies that is going to doom the world. So you're like, yeah, I believe that the world is doomed because of our policies. And then the young people are like, hey, can you change those policies? No, fuck it. Fuck the planet. That's worse than the Republicans, right? You know what I mean? And I talked about this many times before we continue the video. I think conserving the environment is important. I think being an environmentalist is important. In a spiritual, holy way, we are given this planet, and it's our responsibility to take care of it. And we should leave the planet in a better state for our children. I strongly believe that as a core value. But with that said, nothing has done more harm to the environmental agenda than the bullshit, neocon, capitalist climate agenda, which I oppose, because they oppose green imperialism on third world countries. They push the cost of fighting for the environment on the working class with the Democrat, capitalist, liberal, green agenda. There's no environmentalism without class warfare. Environmentalism without class warfare is just glorified gardening. Fam, you're not doing anything. I care about environment. I do. And for all the people on the right who say, who cares to fuck about the environment? Fuck them. Let's care. I don't agree with those people. I do think we should care for the environment, but the climate agenda is a capitalist scam that is meant to avoid class warfare, because you guys see that this fucking sellout, this imperialist Bernie Sanders, is using this climate agenda to prop up genocide Joe Biden. You know, the person who is drilling more than Donald Trump. It's a fact that the right is having a very hard time acknowledging, but Biden is increased oil production in the United States. He is drilling more than Donald Trump, but you gotta see how he uses the fake climate cult to prop up this maniac. So I think this is a very important distinction to make because I care about the environment. I actually find the people who don't care about the environment repugnant. You know what I mean? But the climate agenda and the climate scam has done an amazing amount of damage to our cause. If you're not all for class warfare, if you're not talking about dismantling the military-industrial complex, you're unserious about this issue. Sorry for that rant once again. CJ, let's continue.
No, that was perfect because I did see a comment. I'm trying to find it, but I can comment on it without it. Is that because we hear people say climate change is a hoax, climate change is that. What they really mean is what you just described.
Yeah,
the climate change agenda is what the problem is. That's the scam. That's the capitalist scam. That's the whip scam. That's what that is. It doesn't mean that we're not contributing to damaging the earth. That's not the same thing. And Vivek kind of made a distinction of this, at least in one debate. I don't know how he really feels, but I remember Vivek making climate change agenda. He kept saying it, and he didn't say climate change. But go ahead.
No, to that point, just real quick, and we continue. A few times there have been right wingers that reach out to me like, "Don't you know that climate change is a scam made by Al Gore to make money?" And I'm like, "Yeah, fuck Al Gore, bro. What the fuck you talking about? You think I'm pro Al Gore? Fuck Al Gore and fuck his agenda." And then when I say that, they're like, "Yeah, for sure." And then, guys, when I talk to a lot of these conservatives, they're for clean water. They are for environmentalism. This is what I'm talking about when I mean the damage. Conservatives and Republicans came from a pro-environment ideology. It was Richard Nixon who created EPA. Conservative meaning conserve the environment. It's supposed to be pro-environment. And I'll bring this up to conservatives like, bro, I believe the climate agenda is a capitalist scam too. But why wouldn't you care about taking care of the earth? And everyone relates to that. Even the quote-unquote climate change denialists, you know what I mean? Because I had these conversations while I was canvassing. Remember, I was canvassing in South Carolina. I have a lot of these real world experience talking to these conservatives. And you lose the conservatives on the climate change shit. But when you talk about clean water, when you talk about the fact that military polluting environments, whenever I bring that up, even to the most conservative people, once again, this is anecdotal. Keep that in mind. It's anecdotal. That's what reaches them. You know what I mean? But anyway, CJ, let's continue.
No, that's a great point. Let's get back to the video. It's very short. We're going to just have her re-ask the question and then listen to his answer. 90 seconds here.
Can you, in good conscience, ask your supporters to vote for Mr. Biden?
Well, look, the contrast that I think President Biden made it very clear in the State of the Union address. If you believe that climate change is real, you got to vote for President Biden. If you believe that women have a right to control.
If you believe climate change, that was the first point. Now it's if you believe women have a right to control their bodies. So you're saying, Bernie, we elect Joe Biden and then we get the right to Roe v. Wade is overturned? Like it's absurd because he's just saying Joe Biden just believes this stuff, not that he's going to materially do anything about any of this stuff.
Their own bodies. You got to vote for President Biden. If you think that at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, you don't give trillions of dollars in tax breaks to the 1%, you've got to vote for.
What about during the same income inequality? What if you, instead of giving massive tax breaks to the rich, what if you send $1 trillion to the military industrial complex, Bernie? Wouldn't that be the same thing, Bernie? Wouldn't that be the same thing?
I said this on Saturday. Do progressives know that the arms industry are corporations? You gotta know that. So the arms industry had made record profits under Joe Biden. Sir, what are you talking about? Let's continue. I'm gonna say a lot of my comments to the end of the video because there's a lot to unpack here. This is a very condensed amount of bullshit in this 90 seconds.
Yes. For Biden. If you want to lower the cost of prescription drugs, you got to vote for
another
Biden.
lie.
If you believe in democracy, and involving people in the process rather than keeping people from voting. You have
And keeping people from voting, you shut down the primaries.
to vote for Biden.
So you're saying
So I am
progressives need to put this aside?
I am saying we've got to not put it aside. The fight continues to change Biden's policy in Gaza, but the contrast between Biden and Trump is day and night. The election of Trump would be a disaster for this country and, in my view, the world. We've got to come together, re-elect Biden, but at the same time, we have to demand that we have a progressive agenda where we have an economy that works for all, not just the few.
So you're standing by your endorsement of Mr. Biden's election despite the current policy?
No, I am not supporting Mr.
Trump. This guy is such a fucking disappointment. But go ahead, Nick. You're going to, for your analysis, sir.
There's so much bullshit to unpack there. Let's start with... I'm still torn up on the environment stuff. Obviously, he talked about how if you care about democracy, support Biden. For one, what does that even mean? Like, what does that even mean? That's a filler word that means nothing. But I want to bring this up too because this is the war that Bernie Sanders supports. I'm gonna share my screen just quickly here, CJ. This is the war that Bernie supports. Sure. This is the war that Biden supports. As he pretended tackling corporations, the corporations that stand to benefit from the Ukraine war, the arms industry that made record profit. BlackRock that's like, boy, I'm about to make a ton of money rebuilding this motherfucker. So you guys think you're fighting corporate greed. The United States pledged billions to fight climate change. Then came the Ukraine war. Not only that, you know your boy was caught bombing a whole ass pipeline, Bernie? You know the pipeline that accounts for the largest methane leak in human history? That one? Fam, Joe Biden is the largest eco-terrorist in human history. Since Richard Nixon burnt down the forest in Vietnam, have we ever seen an act of environmental terrorism like this? And now seeing this, I was looking for another receipt. I saw this. I actually got to read through this one. This is a new receipt I just found looking for that one. Look at this. So you had all these experts after the Nord Stream pipeline bombing happened. That was like, oh my God, dude, this is the worst shit ever. This is the worst leak that we ever seen. This is catastrophic. So then it came out that, hey, yo, you know all the shit we said about how bad the Nord Stream pipeline leak was? Yeah, it's actually worse than that. Look at this. Nord Stream gas explosions may have caused greater ecological damage than expected. What? You know how many doomsday headlines I read that I can pull up? Look, this one, if I remember right, is September 2022. Where everyone was like, yeah, this shit's bad. And now the analysis is like, yo, well, this shit's way worse than we thought it was. But good luck asking Bernie a question about the Nord Stream pipeline. Good luck asking AOC, TYT, any of the NATO left about the Nord Stream pipeline, as they say you should vote for Joe Biden for the climate. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to focus on that one because there's so much individual bullshit that Bernie said. Every reason he told you to vote for Joe Biden is the exact opposite. But this lie is the worst among them all. He told you to vote for the Nord Stream pipeline bomber for the environment. War is peace. Ignorance is strength. Freedom is slavery. They're the shit they tell us. So I told you, CJ, I'm going to have a lot to add to some of your stories. So that's my add on to that. You can continue.
Absolutely. And I got, yeah, so let's bring this headline up. This is, I'll put it, just continuing with the Bernie Sanders interview, you saw what he rambled off these list of reasons why you should be voting for Joe Biden. Let me just go a little bit deeper in the conversation, not just that clip. He says more, and I'll read a couple of things here. Bernie Sanders reaffirmed support for Joe Biden after Biden declares no red lines, quote in quotes, in Israeli assault on Gaza. This is from World Socialist website. I'll read a little bit from it. Sanders' boosting of Biden should dispel any lingering doubt workers and youth may have about the political role the senator from Vermont occupies in U.S. politics. Far from the vanguard of a political, I'm laughing at that now when I'm thinking, vanguard of a political revolution, Bernie Sanders?
There's still people who believe this. There's still children who believe this.
Crazy. It's freaking crazy. But I'll continue. Far from the vanguard of the political revolution, Sanders' unwavering support for Biden's election campaign, even as Israel continues to starve and massacre Palestinians after over 155 days of ethnic cleansing, it exposes Bernie as a booster of the Democratic Party and apologist for genocide. In his interview with Margaret Brennan, the one where we just watched, Sanders expressed sorrow for the thousands killed by U.S. supplied bombs and bullets, and increasingly by starvation due to the Israeli blockade. Go ahead.
I love that part. Oopsies. Read that part again. He's upset about the amount of. That's so.
He expressed sorrow.
There it is. That's how you said it.
Sorrow.
He expressed sorrow. Oopsies. I'm very sad. I feel very sad about the children that we helped killed. That's so weird. But sorry, continue.
That's literally the threshold that you have to clear as far as doing something for people who are being repressed and oppressed in this white supremacy DNA country. That's literally the threshold. You feel bad for them? Okay. You're okay now. Go ahead back to your regular life. You get what I'm saying? That's essentially what it is. But I continue. This is a quote, Bernie saying 30,000 people, 2/3 of which women and children, had been killed. But as he does in every public appearance, Sanders refused to characterize the Israeli government action as a genocide or genocidal. Sanders falsely presented the war as solely the product of the right-wing extremist government under Benjamin Netanyahu. In doing so, Sanders completely whitewashes 75 years of U.S. support for Israel and the direct involvement of the Biden administration in arming, financing, and politically supporting Netanyahu's actions. By presenting the current government in Israel as somehow an aberration, and that's what they're all doing, Nick. The establishment started saying this, like they were saying this on Morning Joe a while. Netanyahu's the problem. Netanyahu. It finally has reached the NATO left, the Bernie Sanders industrial complex. Now they're all saying the same thing. But you want to read that from Zoya? That's a good comment right there.
U.S. oil production has reached its largest volume in recorded history, more than 13.2 barrels a day in October. Crazy. Official figures show, outpacing its highest point under Donald Trump's presidency. Now do you guys see why the right sounds so fucking stupid and why they got pushed culture wars? It's the same thing with the open border. They put their boy to shame. Joe Biden deported more people than Donald Trump, but they tell you there's an open border. They tell you that Joe Biden is like they often tell you that Joe Biden is not doing enough with energy production. They pretend that he folded to the Bernie Sanders left and he supported the Green New Deal. This is the kind of shit you will hear from like Janine Pirro and the people I find too stupid to cover, like Laura Ingram. And I know that you don't either. Like I watch your show. So I know you don't either. There's certain people that are too dumb to cover. You know what I mean? Those people are too dumb to cover, and those are the people that will pretend that there's an open border. They're the people who pretend that Joe Biden is actually believes in the Green New Deal. He's not drilling. So, you know, when I do propaganda report, I report on like what I view as state narratives, on especially stuff like foreign policy. To me, they're not even of any value in covering like the Five, Laura Ingram, and those people who repeat that. Like they pretend that Biden at the age of 80, like what is he, like 90,000 years old? They pretend that he's like a radical fucking commie. Like it's so unserious, not even worth my time breaking down a lot of the time. You know what I mean? But great comment as always. That's what I was saying earlier. But let's continue, CJ.
Yeah, Jesse Waters, just to piggyback up. Jesse Waters is another one. Every now and then I'll see something, but it's just a certain group of people. It's like you're too far gone.
I can't even cover you. Like, bro, I can't. There's nothing I can even add to your stupidity, bro. There's a waste of time. You know what I mean? But anyway, go ahead, CJ. Go ahead.
Yeah. All right. So I'll continue with a little bit more of this article. And this is an important point because this is what they're all doing. They're trying to pretend like Netanyahu is the reason, and this new government is the reason that it's so terrible when they've been terrible for years. By presenting the current government in Israel as somehow an aberration from the decades joint Israel-U.S. policy, Sanders postures as an opponent of the Israeli military and declared his opposition to providing another $10.1 billion to Netanyahu, though he indicated he would support funding Israel if Israel let in more aid trucks.
What?
Sanders, yes, he did say that. And I'm going to play it for you in a second.
That's so fucking weak. Anyway, continue. Sorry, continue. That was a visceral reaction. Go ahead.
Sanders' opposition to providing additional military funding to Israel is not across the board. As he wrote in his December 2023 press release, quote, Israel has an absolute right to defend itself. Therefore, I believe it is appropriate to support defensive systems that will protect, you mean like the Iron Dome, that will protect Israeli civilians against incoming missiles and rockets. I have to add this,
go ahead. Go ahead. Continue. That's the bullshit that they say all the time, and the progressive except Palestine people. The people, I'm glad that people don't pull up with their bullshit no more. I'm so glad to see how much even like the professional managerial class left has come where they don't fall for this bullshit no more. When the squad voted for the Iron Dome, when Jamal Bowman voted for the Iron Dome, they're like, oh, it's defensive. Let me put it like this. This is the best analogy I can put to explain why the Iron Dome is not defensive.
I love this analogy. Let everybody listen up. But this is I heard this many times. This is a great analogy. Go ahead.
Imagine you have a serial killer at a mall and he was stabbing a ton of people with a sword and a shield. He was killing people with the sword, yes, but the shield prevented people from stopping him on the rampage. That's how like old school warriors use a shield, or at least warriors in video games. I'm a big video. So you use a shield to bash people with a shield to keep, so you can keep slaughtering people. Let's say you got a high kill count doing this because the shield protect you. Hell, there's even a security guard that's trying to open fire, but you drop Spartan mode and you defend yourself with the shield. Will you categorize this shield that was used in this slaughter as a defensive weapon? It is absolutely not. That's the Iron Dome. It's used to protect Israel as they commit massive, gross human rights offensive against the Palestinian people, as they wage a one-side war against the Palestinian people. And I say the Palestinian people, not Hamas, because they're at war with the Palestinian people.
They are.
Whenever the Palestinians try to respond, like any side in the conflict would, that's in the middle of a conflict, the Iron Dome is there to protect them. The same way that shield is there to protect this theoretical psychopath that is committing a massacre, right? But anyway, let's continue. I think hopefully that makes my point. The idea that Iron Dome is defensive is bullshit, but that's what the progressive except Palestine people always been saying. That has been the PIP talking point for years and years and years. Come on, man. You guys are against funding the Iron Dome? Oh, you just supporting terrorists. Now, this why the left loses me. You guys don't support a little Iron Doming? I've been following this conflict for years. I've been hearing this shit for years. Continue, CJ.
Sanders then reaffirmed his backing for the military campaign against Hamas after a temporary ceasefire. Quote, Hamas is dedicated to destroying Israel, Sanders said, adding, quote, I think at the end of the day, Hamas cannot be continuing to run Gaza, end quote. Though he added the caveat that Netanyahu government would also have to go. Turning to Biden's recent interview, Brennan played a clip in which Capehart asked Biden if it would be a red line if Israel invaded Rafah after Biden had urged him not to. Biden replied, and we saw the video where he said it's a red line, but it's not really, a red line. But let's listen to what Bernie Sanders says. He says the defense of Israel is still critical. So there is this is what Biden says. There is no red line. He added that he would not cut off all weapons so they don't have the Iron Dome to protect them. Asked by Brennan to comment on Biden's red line statement, this is Sanders' reply. Sanders replied that an invasion in Rafah would be an unmitigated disaster, but that the bottom line, though, Netanyahu has got to be told no more money for his war machine unless there is humanity. Unless it is not just no more money. It's no more money unless this happens, unless there is an humanitarian aid coming in to feed the people. Go ahead.
But is a 3-letter word, but that is the biggest word in that paragraph.
Yes. Yes.
Somehow that is the biggest word in that entire paragraph. But let's continue, though. You can continue, CJ.
Yeah, and this is the last part. In other words, as long as there is some humanitarian aid, quote unquote, coming in, Netanyahu and his U.S.-funded war machine can continue their campaign. And that's the same way I read what Bernie Sanders said in the interview. Now let's listen to Pramila Jayapal, what she says, kind of chiming in on this. This is about 90 seconds here.
Sure, there certainly needs to be an effort to reach out to progressives, but then you also see the campaign that is monitoring the moderate independent base as well, right? There's still this underlying idea that you need the moderates, that you need Nikki Haley's voters to win this election. What leverage do progressives have in this moment?
So you understand the framing. She's saying they need to go after basically suburban white moms, the Nikki Haley supporters. So in that framing, Pramila, how does the progressive have leverage? Meaning they're just going to go after, since you guys don't want to fall in line, we'll just go after and we'll just move right and go after these other people. But go ahead, Nick, you're going to chime in.
This shows how there's actually kind of two ways you can take this, that there's no meritocracy in DC and the Democratic Party, or they don't care about winning. I think both of those are valid takes away from this, because you guys understand this is the ideology that lost Obama over 1,000 seats. You guys understand this is the ideology that led to the right-wing Supreme Court. You know, the Supreme Court that they're currently bitching about. They can blame everyone under the sun. They can blame Jill Stein. They can blame me. They can blame RBN. They can blame Jimmy Dore. But the reason why we have a Supreme Court, that's the legacy of Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and Barack Obama. Mostly Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, because what is their job? Their only job as leader is to elect more Democrats. They failed. They lost 1,000 seats with this strategy that Chuck Schumer laid out, that they're going to abandon working people of color so they can win back suburban moms, suburban white women that abandoned the party. You want to know how well that worked out? Donald Trump, of all people, won the white woman vote not once, but twice. In fact, he did better with white women in 2020 than he did the first time. So not only is this a completely disgusting strategy on face value, the fact that you're going to abandon workers for the suburbs, it didn't even work. Like, if you was to take morality out of it and you just look at it objectively, the strategy that you're advocating for and what you hear on Morning Joe is a failing strategy. Now think about it. 50% of people don't vote. So why would you go after these mythical voters that you created in your mind? Nikki Haley voters are something you guys created. Numbers-wise, wouldn't it make more sense to go after the 50% of voters who don't vote, the working class people who are disaffected? No, because of class antagonisms. Class antagonisms, class differences cannot be reconciled through electoral politics. That's why they are even willing to engage in a losing strategy, because class antagonisms run that strong in politics. Sorry for the lecture, but let's continue. Go ahead, CJ.
No, those are some great points. Let's just finish out this video with Pramila, and then we have George Galloway and Abby Martin chiming in also.
Yeah.
We have a lot of leverage. The only reason President Biden got elected in 2020.
I'm sorry. So I should just to remind, she's answering, do progressives have leverage? That's what she's talking about. So let's listen.
We have a lot of leverage. The only reason President Biden got elected in 2020 was because he came out and was a champion for a very fragile coalition coming together. He had a lot of respect for progressives. We had, if you remember,
She said he had a lot of respect for progressives, and the point that the thing that she proves, or the thing that she shows, is that proves he had respect. Remember those? Let me let her say it, and then I will comment.
For progressives, we had, if you remember, the Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force.
The Biden-Sanders Unity Task Force. You remember that, Nick? Where they refused to even vote Medicare for all on the damn platform, the platform that has no like teeth to do anything. They refused that. What came out of that task force? But she is trying. I can't stress
They're
enough.
so disgusting.
Pramila Jayapal. How did you describe her? She's the person she's hired
she's
to lose.
To be a professional loser. Like they're here for a reason. They're here to be professional losers. They're not the best among us. Like these, like what the idiots would say, like the Ryan Grahams, the David Packman. They're like, come on, man, they're not perfect, but they're the best among us. No, they're here to serve a role. Pramila Jayapal, her role is to write a Medicare for all bill and to make sure that motherfucker never passes. Their job is to be the losers, to be like, oh man, we tried, but we couldn't accomplish it. Oops. Sorry, man. If only we fight harder next time. Then they propose another stupid strategy that doesn't work. Oh man, unfortunately, we couldn't get accomplished. Only we tried this time. You guys see how they stall for the establishment? That's their job. They stall for the establishment. But anyway, let's continue. I'm gonna have a lot to say to what the bullshit that she says here. Not only did they not get Medicare for all on the progressive task force, this is what I'm about to say. Biden didn't even do the stuff that was on the task force, like the public option, the $15 minimum wage.
Nope.
Like the task, I still remember in my debate with that deeply unserious clown Vosh, that was one of the talking points he stuck on me because he like, do you know what the progressive task force? I was like, no, I don't know about that shit. And then they use that as a guy say, oh look, Nick, you say we shouldn't vote for Biden. You don't know what the task force is? And I said, I'm like, bro, I don't know what the fucking task force is. Because it doesn't matter what they fucking put on the task force, they're not gonna do it. And that's why they're like, see, Nick is crazy. He don't even know what the task force is. He say you don't vote for Biden. That was their big gotcha. And I told them to their face that it doesn't matter what was on that task force. They wasn't gonna do it. And that's exactly what happened, right? So the fact that she even brought up the task force years later shows how nefarious she is. Like, I would think that she wouldn't even bring it up. The fact that she brings it up shows how she's trying to mislead people about her failures, and the fact that the Democratic Party haven't even come close to matching the ask of the progressive community. But let's continue, CJ.
Yeah, so let's finish out. It's about another minute left for this video. She just goes on with just more nonsense.
We had, if you remember, the Biden-Sanders Unity Task Forces. We had a very progressive agenda. He had a very progressive agenda, and he does too in terms of an economic agenda today. That is the same progressive agenda that we're running on, and we accomplished so much. But I would just say to everybody, I think the biggest base of swing voters is not just the independent suburban woman. And by the way, I don't know that we're going to get many of the Haley voters, but we will get, I think, some independent suburban women. They are very important. But the biggest base of swing voters is progressive voters, young voters, Black and brown voters, immigrant voters who we desperately need to turn out. And I think that is the coalition we need to rebuild. I think we can do it, but the president's got to be just as attentive to progressive voters as he was in 2020. And then, listen, Paula, I think we have a lot of work left to do. Universal child care.
It is so terrible how she's trying to rewrite history, that Joe Biden was attentive in that is not how even that task force. Remember, they didn't have one progressive speak at the freaking conference, and that was a big deal. They just had AOC kind of introduce somebody, and then that was it. Like the retelling of history, and this is just simply not what happened. This is simply not what happened. And it's disgusting that Pramila, AOC, and Bernie Sanders, they do this all the time. At the moment, it's pretty terrible. And then when it's time for re-election, oh, Joe Biden has been great the whole time. And it's disingenuous, it's dishonest, it's all of the above.